Welcome to the Cabrera Lab Podcast.
Hey.
What's up?
How you doing?
Chilling.
Chilling?
Yeah. What are we talking about?
I was thinking, I don't really have a topic.
Uh-oh.
We released a really interesting episode last week on DSRP therapy.
Yeah.
We were also talking to our beautiful children the last few days, and we were giving them kind of life lessons around things like integrity and hard work and character and things like that. I was actually thinking it kind of would be a nice extension of where we've been to think about parenting, life advice, how DSRP can help you shape those kinds of things. I mean, we've often talked about this. I feel like a lot of the role of us as parents is to actually help uncover the mental models that are causing the problems for our kids as they navigate daily life, help them see their mental model, its relationship to their behaviors, that kind of stuff. Because I know there's a lot of parents out there.
I think you're right, uncovering their mental models, but I think the more, not more important, but the step that's really critical is that you don't just uncover, but you help them to take the reins to uncover their mental models, right? So I've always, my whole life, that old saying of like, you can teach a man to fish or you can give a man a fish, that has really influenced my life a great deal. It's a very simple saying, but to me, it's like a huge concept, which is that, so you can, and I think that's relevant to therapy as well. Therapy, parenting, counseling, coaching. It's like, do you want to be like a consultant that comes in with a fish? Do you want to be a fishmonger, which is the old word for, somebody who sells fish at the market? The old word? I don't think people use monger anymore.
Fishmonger?
Fishmonger. But a fishmonger is the guy at the market that sells the fish, right? So you get all your fish lined up on the ice kind of thing. Do you want to be, whether you're talking about parenting, coaching, counseling, therapy, whatever, do you want to be the person that sells fish, or do you want to be the person that's a fishing guide that's teaching people how to fish? And I think obviously, the fish business is a good business if you want to be in the fish business. But when you're in the role of parenting, when you're in the role of counseling, when you're in the role of coaching, when you're in the role of therapy, those and teaching, those roles, I think, are inherently roles that should focus on guiding. Yeah. So yes, uncover, see one, do one, teach one kind of idea, right? So that your kid or your student or your client, whatever they are, they need to see it done, right? So that they can then do one, and then eventually the highest form of learning is actually teaching, in my opinion.
You mean teaching somebody else?
Yeah, like one of the best ways to learn something is to have to teach it, right? So the old pedagogy just means like the practice of teaching, the underlying theory of teaching. Yes. Or andragogy is adult learning or whatever. I'm kind of going all over the place, but
as if you don't all the time.
Yeah, par for the course. So
when you were saying the thing about when you're in the role of parent, blah, 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 you want to be the guide. And I think part of the pitfalls of being a parent is when you see your child suffering a consequence of something or struggling with something, our immediate thing is we want to solve it. We want to get the pain.
Totally.
We want to remove the pain. We want to solve the problem. But that's actually, in some ways, a disservice. If you're in a helping profession or if you're trying to guide your kids, what you want to do is acknowledge the feelings, acknowledge the pain, but also equip them with the tools to, what we're basically saying is develop their own awareness, their own metacognition, so that they can understand the patterns of their choices, their behaviors, their mental models, rather than just try to solve the problem, for them.
You're right that when they're struggling, our natural inclination is to fix it. Absolutely. And fixing it is fishmongering, right? It's selling fish, giving fish, providing fish. but they need to learn how to fish, and one of my alma maters, which has since just collapsed as an organization, it's gone completely haywire, but it used to be a really remarkable organization. The Outward Bound was all about natural consequences and those kinds of things, and living in the mountains. The mountains are a great place for natural consequences.
Yeah.
So you get near immediate feedback to your decisions and your choices and things like that. If you hang your jacket on a tree and you don't secure your tent and things like that, then leave your socks out, a marmot steals your socks, and if you leave your tent untethered, it blows away, so you just get immediate consequences. You don't get warm when you get to camp, you get cold, so because the sweat dries and you get super cold.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I said, Outward Bound's kind of lost its way itself, and sometimes people lose their way, like teenagers and things like that. So I think you really want to help them see it, help them be metacognitive, so that what really matters is what they do when you're not around.
Yeah.
Right? How do you help them see their mental models? How do you help them process their emotions, regulate their emotions, all those kinds of things, so that they can do it on their own?
Yeah, but I think the best analogy that I can think about from conversations over the years is when you talk about when a kid's on a mountaineering course, there's a time when they're doing a solo.
Yes.
They're sort of out on their own, and they definitely experience that they're alone, and they're learning how to sort of take care of themselves and be alone and be in nature. But that you're always you're tracking them. They don't know you're tracking them.
Yeah, that's actually what we call final expedition, right? They have solo first and then final expedition, and then you're tracking them as they're moving, because they don't move during solo. They just sit.
But they don't know that you're tracking.
But they don't always know you're tracking them. Like you might be running up on a cliff, on a ridge, and they're down below, and you're kind of like scoping them up.
But the point is, for that, the idea is for them to experience navigation alone, experience the risks and the consequences of their micro choices.
Yes.
As long as they're safe. I mean, that's why you're there, so that they're safe.
Yeah, there's actually a concept called actual versus perceived risks. Mm-hmm. So you want the perceived risk to be high. You want to create situations where the perceived risk is high, but the actual risk is low, because you don't want to expose the organization or yourself, the structure of the organization, including the staff and everything, to risk. Right? But at the same time, your job is to manage and facilitate the feeling of risk, so that people have the natural consequences, so that they have the pressure, so that they have those kinds of things. And I think this is it's really not a metaphor. I mean, it's a direct application to parenting and to counseling and to all kinds of things. Is like, how do we get the situation to be as real as possible, but structured, scaffolded, so that it's a learning experience, right? Not a crash and burn and
right
terrible things happen experience, right?
No, and I mean, I think to me, that's a great analogy to the whole parenting idea, because allowing them to have the high perceived risk and actually have the direct connection between a choice and a consequence and experience it in a safe way burns the neurons to remind them, oh, this choice led to that consequence, and maybe I don't want that to be a pattern in my life.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's in the positive, like this choice led to a good benefit, and I want that to be a positive pattern in my life.
And there are some risks that are just too high, right? I mean, we've always said to our kids, for me, there's two no-goes, right? Like cars and drugs, right? Yeah. Because those are the two places that you can just really destroy your life.
Yes.
Right? Cars and drugs.
Yes.
Right? These bodies that we're in aren't meant to go 60, 70 miles an hour and crash into things.
Right.
Like, doesn't matter how safe your car is. That's a bad. We're not evolved to that, to those kinds of impacts, right? So cars, you don't mess around with, and drugs you don't mess around with, especially today, because the drugs are so much more dangerous. They're so much more sophisticated. And our brains
Deadly.
are not evolved to deal with a lot of these drugs. So just like, generally speaking, stay away from stupid behavior when it comes to cars and drugs. But everything else
It's
pretty recoverable, you know, or, I mean, aside from like diving off of roofs and things like that at parties. And, you know, you just have to be careful
about those
kinds of permanent things, right?
Yeah.
But everything else is kind of like, it's your time to experience the world and to make mistakes. And it's unfortunate because being at Cornell, you know, we see a lot of the kids that come to Cornell that have the grades to get into Cornell and all that kind of stuff. And they've just been put under a tremendous amount of pressure, to be perfect and to be all these things. And, you know, when they get to Cornell, a lot of times the wheels come off, you know, and they get hit in the face with, you know, life isn't about being perfect. Life isn't about, you know, doing everything perfect. That's a weird expectation. It's
Yeah. Well, also they deal with, I mean, they have to challenge their sense of their self, because what's gotten them to Cornell is being sort of number one in their class. And then they're sitting in a classroom full of number ones in their class. And so suddenly they're struggling with that identity and, you know, just their own sense of themselves and feeling very different because it's a totally different experience.
Totally different. And, you know, then they get out in the real world and they realize, oh, this thing that I've been good at is called school.
Right.
And being good at school doesn't mean you're good at life. In fact, in many cases, it means you're not terribly good at life.
Right, which is why you want to impart upon your kids or impress upon your kids that there's a benefit to being good at school, which is that it opens a lot of doors up, but that you also need to balance that with being other things, right? You know, good hard worker, you know, character, integrity, the kinds of things that have to parallel that so that when you actually leave, you know, you're ready for the real world and you have the kinds of characteristics you need to really succeed.
Yeah, I think that is a huge issue today, in that what we're teaching kids at school does not include a lot of the things that they need to be successful in life.
Right.
And I think there are schools and teachers and superintendents and principals who are interested in more, you know, making the curriculum more accessible to life, and, you know, that success in the curriculum is success in life kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the majority of schools are not doing that. And so as parents, I think you have to round out what they're getting at school, right?
Absolutely.
You have to round out the character education, for example. You've got to build character in your kids. Character is one of the hardest things to build, and it takes the longest time to build it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can teach you algebra pretty quickly, but I can't teach you integrity. It takes 20 years to teach somebody integrity.
Right.
It takes 20 years to teach somebody to have empathy and all these different aspects of character and emotional intelligence, where you have some regulation on your emotions, where you can sort of, you know, not have your first reaction be your only action, right? Mm-hmm. I think, you know, some of these quote unquote soft skills are a lot harder to build than some of the hard skills.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but you need to balance both in a lot of ways. You know, you need to have a little bit of both. And I would hope that character is one of the defining things for success or not success. You know, that people of high character are more likely to succeed in.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that as a parent, you learn the party move, and zoom into, you know, the zoom in move, and zoom into what are all the parts of the person that I want to build by the time they're 20.
Yeah.
What are all the parts that I care about? What, you know, you could research it, you could get advice, whatever. But at the end of the day, as a parent, you get to decide what are the things I care about for my kid. Mm-hmm. And that it could include, you know, character, and the character has a bunch of parts. It could include sports, which has, you know, tremendous influence on character and things like that, right? Yeah. It could include getting good grades, but it could include being curious without the classes, right? You know, if you never, I remember with one of our kids, I won't say who, but
they know who they are.
You know, I think around like 13 or something, she said, I wish I could learn about whatever, some things.
I remember this at the table.
But there's no classes on it. And I'm like, you can learn about anything you want to learn about whenever you want to learn about it. Like, you don't have to wait for a class. You don't have to wait for a, but that was her mental model, was like...
She was a very good student.
She was, right? If there's no class, then there's no learning.
Right.
And it's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah.
I was the opposite. I was like, I want to learn whatever I want to learn, and some of the things that we're covering in class are kind of boring.
Yeah.
So, life is so much more interesting. But in any case, back to the point, make a part party, all the parts and the relationships between the parts of what you want to build. And that could include financial knowledge. I mean, we don't teach kids how to manage money and things like that, things that are important. It could include, athleticism, your body, knowing your body, nutrition, all these things that turn out to be just wildly important for life, right?
Yeah.
Friendships.
Yeah.
Metacognitive, physical, all these different dimensions. And then say, okay, well, how are they going to learn lessons in those areas? Because school's only covering, probably 2 out of the 10.
Well, and I think also, what happens is you put sort of a chronological perspective on that. So, you start, for example, kids in sports very young to get them used to the dynamics of being on a team and how to be structured and being movement, and then, but as they get older, then it's more about, so you set them up to succeed based on the qualities you want to build, right? So you create the experiences that help them build those qualities when they're younger. And then when they get older, it's more about handing the choice to a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old in a very limited...
The revocable card key.
Yeah, but like in a limited set. So the choices are all safe.
Yeah.
But then they start to develop the sense of my choices, my style. Because when they leave for college, we want to make sure, they're equipped.
That's right.
We don't want to be a crutch, in other words, their whole life.
Well, and that's the problem, is sometimes we do. Sometimes if we haven't dealt with our own bullshit...
Moms.
As adults, if we haven't dealt with our own bullshit, then we get all these like Scooby snacks from like having our children be dependent on us.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is to get them to be able to, go out in the world and be more independent, or at least interdependent, and not codependent.
Yes.
The other thing I would say is like things like one of my favorite. I mean, we work at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, and one of my favorite places there is a statue of MacArthur, and it basically, I forget the quote, but we can put the quote up, but it basically says, the reason we do sports isn't because of sports. The reason we do sports is because it teaches us so much about all the skills we need for, in the case of the military academy, leadership and all the teamwork and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like our kids didn't play sports because we thought they were going to be football, NFL, get to the NFL or something, or lacrosse leagues or whatever. They played sports because when you play sports, it teaches you that it's not all about you. Right. It teaches you that you have to work with others. It teaches you that you can be. It fundamentally teaches you about dynamics. It teaches you about emergence. Like that the whole somehow is like you can get more done together than if you're just a bunch of superstars or a bunch of individual players. That's one of the things that I think is infecting negatively academia. Is you have all these individual players. Yeah. And none of them know how to work on a team. Right. You have all these individual contributors, and none of them know how to work on teams.
Because they've excelled on their own.
In
isolation.
And, it just makes for kind of a...
That's why faculty meetings are hard.
That's why faculty hate their lives by the time they're like...
No, I'm saying that's why the faculty meetings are hard, because there are all these, seemingly, it's a group.
They're little kings of their own world.
Yeah.
And then they all get together as a table of kings, and you're like, how's this going to work?
Well, what's interesting though is the students experience the program as a set.
It's a system,
as a system, but the parts of the system don't always coordinate with each other enough.
Never.
There are breakdowns across, course to course. And well, what's interesting is that list of qualities and characteristics. There's this sort of weird contradiction where if you're good at school and you play by the rules, you get really far sort of as an individual. But in the real world, you're going to exist in a team, in a group. You're not going to be working in isolation unless you're like, I don't know, in a laboratory all by yourself or something.
Well, again, I think it's like and both rather than either or, right? Mm-hmm. Like you want your kids to be able to be an individual contributor. You want your kids to be able to, also be on a team.
Yeah.
You want your kids to be happy alone. You want your kids also to be happy in groups.
Right.
That's what I'm saying about the party of different parts that you've put together in your formula for parenting, right? So think about what are the, literally what are the parts, right? Just make a, whatever number of parts that you have. Mm-hmm. And then, what are the relationships maybe between the parts? And I think it's a lot of both. I think the problem is when we focus on, my kid's going to be a 4.8 violin concerto, whatever fucking thing.
Yeah.
And
Genius,
and then they're going to be great at this, and they're going to be great at that, and they're going to have all the activities, and they're going to have all this, and that, your kid's going to be strung out by the time they get to college. Yeah. And they're going to be miserable, and they're not going to know what the hell they want to do in life. That's what's going to happen.
Or who they are.
Yeah. Because they've never made any choices. There's a great study that was done on STEM programs, in particular robotics competitions, right? Mm-hmm. And every year what they found was the robot that was being made, like the car or whatever the hell, what I forget what it was, but the every year the advances were just like exponential. They would get so much better every year, and you're like, well, wait a minute. So you're taking a bunch of kids, this competition in particular is, you're taking a bunch of kids that are totally new to it, and then they learn stuff, and then they go to a competition. So you would think that every year it would kind of come roughly reset to inexperienced people learning to do something with some experience. But what was actually happening was the instructors were getting so into it that every year they wanted to like advance. So it's more a testimony to the capabilities of the instructors than the capabilities of the kids.
Right.
And that's what you don't want. Mm-mm. But that's what a lot of parents are doing is like, here's my kid. I'm going to prop him up as an effigy of me, and I'm going to live vicariously through them. But they're their own little critter.
Yes.
And they're going to do a different thing. They're not going to do what you did. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. There's a lot of things to do in life. Like, let them do it.
Give them the space to figure that out.
This episode is sponsored by Training Camp, the ultimate online spot for building the mental fitness that drives personal and professional change and success. At Training Camp, you'll have access to the science and practice of thinking with personalized thinking assessments, tiered training, and best of all, practice that improves skill. Go to CabreraLab.org to learn more. And now, back to the episode.
What you want to focus on is not the specific things they do, but who they are when they're doing it. Mm-hmm. Who are they? Do they have integrity? Do they have character? Are they people of their word? Mm-hmm. Are they kind? Are they empathic?
Yeah.
Are they emotionally intelligent? Are they analytically intelligent? Are they creatively intelligent? Mm-hmm. Can they do well alone? Can they do well in teams? Are they good athletically? Are they good in their mind? Do they like to read? Do they, like give them access to the whole world.
Yeah.
I always think of them as like little Vitruvian beings, like the hitting on all the parts of who we are as humans is what actually leads to happiness. Being like one trick.
I think people worry though that and I think people worry that if my kid's not like the best at one thing, they're not going to go anywhere.
They're not going to get
Or they
into
think
college.
Vitruvian is like, oh, they're just good enough at a bunch of stuff, but they're not excellent at anything, which isn't really.
But your kids are going to choose that path.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they might be really, really good at one thing. They might be the best pianist in the whole world, or the best violinist, or the best, they might have the best grades. Like, one of our kids had really great grades. Mm-hmm. That wasn't our choice.
Yeah.
That was her choice.
She did that.
Right?
Yeah.
I just don't think any of these things are make or break. I mean, we're about to do a conference on webs of causality. The point is, there's a web of causality that leads to life success. And I don't mean that just simply financially. I mean that in terms of financial, happiness, relationship, kids, family, all the things that your kids are going to want, or in whatever configuration they're going to want it.
Yeah.
Life success is the result of a web of causality. It's not one thing.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And it might be very different from what we as parents think it's going to be. And it's probably going to be different for each kid.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
That's hard. Like, they come out, we all know as parents, they come out of the womb. They're not blank slates. We used to think in science that these kids were blank slates, when they came out. But they're not. They come out with personalities.
Right, and you expect, like, when you have your second kid, you're like, oh, this is going to be easy because I've already got one. I've already managed one.
This is a totally different
And then it's a totally different kid with different needs, different sleep patterns, different personality. And you're like, wait a minute. So now I've just added like a whole nother set of, and then you have another one. And then you've got the dynamics between and among them. You've got the 3 separate kids and all of the different dynamics between and among them. And it's like a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And so you never really are getting credit for the first one.
I think the idea is just to expose them to as much of life as you can expose them to.
Yeah.
And let them choose. And if you give them the base skills like character, skills like, mind awareness, body awareness, nutritional awareness, the desire to do well, the motivation to just give it your best, always. That, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. All these different sort of things. Yeah. If you build those skills, whatever world they end up in, those skills apply.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If they don't end up being the thing that everybody thought they were going to be, they still will have the necessary skills to do well in that new world that they choose. And we don't even know what world they're going into. I mean, the world's totally different.
It's changing all the time.
It's changing all the time.
Sometimes when you teach kids about their own mental models and how they're thinking about things, that's like a little backpack on their back that they can take wherever they go, in school, out of school. And I think the point of that backpack is then they have just like teaching them to fish, they have the skill to adapt, to take care of themselves, to understand the world as they navigate it, to adjust.
Yeah, I actually think I don't know if people have seen the World Economic Forum's 2025 data on the top report, top 10 skills. I mean, 7 out of the top 10 skills are directly related to cognition, thinking, right? So it's like creative thinking, systems thinking, critical, analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, adaptability. I mean, and even AI. And when they say AI, they don't necessarily mean that you're going to be, everybody needs to be programming large language models, LLMs. What they mean is that you're able to utilize AI, which is all about prompting. So questions are more important than answers, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we all know it's remarkable, really, what's happening with AI, because I think AI is almost showing us who we are. It's showing us not only what we collectively think, but it is also very clearly showing us where the line is of what uniquely makes humans.
Yes.
Right? Because AI can do some absolutely amazing things, and it can do it really fast, but then it bumps up against these walls that you go, oh, that's like a really basic thing, and this AI is very far away from understanding that.
Yeah.
That's really basic.
Yeah.
To a human.
Yeah.
Right? But then it does things you're like, wow, that is unbelievable that it just did that. I can't do that.
But most of that's around how quickly it can synthesize and do stuff. Like, it can do stuff faster than us.
Yeah, it can do stuff
with large
really,
bodies
with
of
large
data
bodies
and
of
knowledge
things.
and stuff. But in terms of really shaping the direction of
Yes.
things and even like an AI couldn't prompt itself, right? Like, it couldn't come up with the kinds of prompts that you come up with in terms of what you're looking for very easily.
Yeah, I mean, it could hypothetically prompt itself, but it can't prompt itself in some new trajectory, right? It can only prompt it's almost like if an AI existed back in the day before we discovered, the continent here, an AI would never say like, oh, there's more out there kind of thing, right? It would just be like, this is what's going on here.
One thing I love about AI, and we talk about AI a lot with people all over, is AI is the classic example of us understanding what we are by understanding what we're not because of AI.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
We have a good friend in Tennessee, John, who's doing a PhD on what is uniquely human intelligence, different than artificial intelligence. And it's just that the process of honing in on that is so fascinating.
It's fascinating.
And so valuable for us.
I think in a weird sort of way, AI is teaching us who we are.
Yeah.
Because it's really showing us what matters, right? Like there's a lot of stats going around right now about the percentage of programmers, right? That are programming that's going to just be taken up by AI, right? So here's this job that everybody's like, oh, this is a great job, blah, blah, blah. Now 20%, then 30%, then 40, maybe 50. People are predicting 60. People are saying 60 already.
Yeah.
60%, up to 70, maybe 80, 90, whatever percent is going to be done by AI of programming in these big companies, Apple, Microsoft, Google, right?
Yeah.
Well, the question is, the thing that's interesting to me is not the percentage, it's the anti-percentage.
Yeah.
It's the other. So if whatever number it is, if it's 60%, what's the 40%?
That's interesting.
Right? What's the part that AI can't do?
Yeah.
That's like really interesting. Okay, let's say it's 80%. What's the 20% going to be? Right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why? Because I think we're really close to moving from possibly, 30% to 70%. But we're really far away when it gets to the 70% to 80 and 80 to 90 and 90 to 10. Those are big jumps.
Yeah.
So I think we're, a hop, skip, and a jump away from moving 50% up. But it's that last 10, 20, 30% that's going to be interesting. And that's going to teach us what we really do that's unique.
Yeah.
Us humans.
Yeah, and I do worry, like, for example, kind of calling it back to what we were talking about with kids, like, I do worry that having chat and having all of this AI available is making them kind of, I don't want to say lazy or not curious. It makes it seem like the effort of curiosity and exploration is not needed, right? Because if you can fulfill it. No, but think about it. Like, if I'm a kid and I have 10 assignments at school, and I can finish them in 5 minutes with AI.
I say do it. They were bullshit assignments anyway.
No, I know that.
I say do it. They were bullshit assignment, make work anyway.
Busy work, yeah.
They were busy work anyway. That's the beauty of what AI is teaching us. It's teaching us, like, oh, you mean my assignments can get done by a computer? Yeah, because your assignments sucked.
Yeah. Because it was just regurgitation of information.
It was regurgitation of information.
There was no thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Your assignments suck. That's why they can be done that way.
Yeah.
So maybe you should do a better job of your assignments. Maybe you should do a better job of teaching. Maybe you should do, right? Like, I'm not worried at all. I think we've gone through we've gone through this with everything. We went through this with books, with paper, with the calculator. We went through it with Feynman diagrams. So Harvard professors and Princeton professors used to say, in physics, that Feynman diagrams, drawing little diagrams about quantum physics, was cheating.
Right.
Right? Because the students liked them more than differential equations.
Well, who wouldn't?
Because they were useful.
And they were visual.
Yeah, they were visual and useful. I think what we're going to figure out is what is uniquely... And here's the thing. Here's the part this is what I love. I mean, AI is just going to completely expose all our bullshit. Because the truth of the matter is, these skills that we've been studying for 30 years have always been the most important skills.
Yes.
We've just gone astray. We've gone awry. We've gone down the wrong path, saying that these other skills. So when AI takes over programming, when it takes over law, when it takes over all these linearized, process-oriented things, right? Because it can, because we've reduced them to such sort of mechanical systems that AI can do them.
Yeah.
What'll be left is the dynamic. What'll be left is the organic. What'll be left is the character, the ethics, the empathy, all these things that make us uniquely human. The deep ability to be both analytical and creative and critical at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, to have all of that integrated into this remarkable human being, that's what we should be teaching our kids. Those skills are timeless. They're timeless skills.
Yes.
And what AI is going to show us is how timeless they are.
Yes, I love that. I think that's dead on.
Because AI is showing us how timely these ridiculous skills are. And it's showing us how ridiculous we've been to put so much weight on information.
Yeah. Not the other parts.
Yeah.
Like the actual organization and how we're building meaning.
Yeah.
Which is
exactly
what matters.
In terms of like M equals IO, AI is showing us the I's easy.
Yeah.
And it's showing us the O is actually the hard part. The O is the part where the human comes in.
Well, the O is not just, I don't know if I would say it's the hard part. It's the necessary part, and it's almost the I want to say it's like a multiplier, right, on the information.
Yeah, I don't mean that, you're right. It's not really that it's the hard part. It's the part that can take things in so many different directions. It's the part where you can be like, wait a minute, but what about this? You know, and AI is just going to do like the standard thing based on the statistical pattern. Well, what about the thing that lies outside the statistical pattern?
Right.
That opens up a new door that nobody's ever opened before.
Yeah.
You know, that's a little harder.
And that's where all the fun stuff is.
And that's where the fun stuff is, and that's where the human stuff is. And I think it's going to be an exciting time. And I think they should let AI just take over classrooms to show us how bad our teaching is.
I think that what's interesting is, you know, because we've worked a lot in schools.
I was mostly referring to college. Like in college, we're all freaking out about like, oh, these kids are using AIs to write their papers, and you're like,
well, yeah, of course they are. And not only that, there's this new trend where they cite in their citations. They say this paper was written using this AI, and
this spell checker,
and then they say this spell checker made the language more conversational, and then this thing made this, and then I ran it through this. It's like a 4-step process of 4 different types of AI. But because it's cited, then I guess it's supposed to be okay. Well, so, you know, then the question is, well, why is it that you've assigned a paper that people can just run through the AI and write without the sort of curiosity and original thought that you had intended, right? So then I changed the assignment.
Yeah, or maybe we should have them do stuff.
Yeah, something other than that.
Like maybe it should be something that would be obviously an AI production if they tried to do it purely with AI rather than using AI as a tool.
Exactly.
Right? If your assignment, if you can't tell the difference between a student that used AI and a student that didn't in your assignment, then your assignment is flawed.
Yeah. I also think that AI, the best way to use AI is to increase your efficiency.
Sure.
Not to replace your thinking, but to increase the speed by which you can process stuff, generate stuff, and then you add your big brain thinking, and you make you improve it. Right?
I mean, I use AI to do all kinds of things like automation, but it's my brain that's guiding the direction.
Yeah.
And that direction is uniquely me. That direction that I'm choosing to write, the direction I'm choosing to explain something in, that's That's the part that matters.
Yeah, because you're using it as a tool for your own thinking.
Sure.
You're not letting it do the thinking. You're just using it as a tool to move your thinking.
I've always said, like, we want to shine a light on things because things get all weird in the shadows. Like that's where, democracy goes to die and all kinds of stuff in the shadows. What?
Roaches live.
Yeah.
Down there.
It's like shine a light. I think AI is going to shine a light on a lot of our practices and a lot of our thinking. And like what we thought was difficult is actually easy. And what we thought was easy is actually difficult.
Yes. That would be interesting.
And what we thought matters doesn't. And what we didn't think matters. And what we haven't paid hardly any attention to, which is all this stuff we're talking about, like building great people.
Yes.
Your job as a parent is literally to build a great person. Mm-hmm. It's going to take time, and the fruits of your labor are going to happen way down the road. And there's going to be a period where you're like, did I totally not do it right? Mm-hmm. But it's not. If you're patient, you'll see it happen.
They come out on
the other side, right? If you put the work in, you will build something great. Mm-hmm. The greatest thing that you build in your life.
Yes.
It's not by pressuring them to be good at, whatever. And it's not by, it's by exposing them, by coming up with your particular parenting fingerprint, your party of things that you think are the things you want to focus on for your children.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a lot of them are going to be the same for most parents because most parents want, they want their children to get all the different aspects of life.
Yeah.
All of it. You want to feel good.
You want them to be
emotionally.
Happy, secure,
you want to feel good
loved.
physically. You want to feel good relationally. You want to, you want to be like the whole spectrum of being human.
Yeah.
Well, build it.
Yeah, and I liked the and both comment you made, which is we don't have to make these hard choices. You can work on all of them in a web.
Yeah.
And create the experiences and the guidance to get all kinds of things accomplished, not just zero in on one thing.
Yeah.
I like that. Sounds like a recipe for success.
I think so.
Yeah.
I had very good role models with parents. I won the parent lottery.
You did.
I just never remember them pressuring us to do anything or
be anything.
I just was terrible. I was I'm sure my parents just thought, what have we done?
I've heard the stories.
Just what have we done? He's a complete loser.
No, but the things that mattered, the things that make up the character of who you are, they stuck. And they got you through those hard points.
Yeah. They
those
focused
transitions.
on things like character and
integrity.
My dad, it's on his gravestone. He used to say, like, to whom much is given, much is expected, know. Yeah, it's just, you just got to get them to see those kind of lessons,
And you live by that.
Yeah.
It is who you are.
I think so. I mean, these kids, they're amazing.
I think they are.
Every single one of them is amazing. You just got to put the work in and have a plan for what you want to do and then adapt to reality on the ground because they're gonna throw curveballs and all kinds of stuff, and that's part of the fun of the unpredictability and all that. But
I also think a lot of it is communication and transparency. As they get older,
totally,
you start to communicate that, and that allows them to take some agency at the right point in their life over who they become.
And you want them to be good parents too when they grow up, right? So like show them that being a parent is being a human. Being a parent isn't being this like perfect thing. It's just being a human being. You're doing your best.
We make mistakes.
Yeah, we make mistakes. We get frustrated. We say stupid shit. We're sometimes wrong with our advice. Okay. Yeah. That's going to happen to you too.
Yeah, and then we recover. Well,
that's a wrap.